Yeah, greetings from Toronto on the shores of Great Lake, Ontario. This is Andrew McDonald from the PAC Next team, your moderator today for what promises to be a very interesting discussion about the life of the ubiquitous plastic bottle. So we'll wait a minute or two while everyone joins in. I can see the participant numbers ticking up and up. So we'll give it a minute or so and then I'll be back with you. Okay, well, listen, once again, greetings from Toronto, Ontario, everyone. This is Andrew McDonald with you. Great to have you with us, tuning in from Canada, from the US, and beyond today. Again, my name is Andrew McDonald. I'm the project manager for PAC Next, which is PAC's program of sustainability and circular economy initiatives. And before I introduce today's excellent presenters, I've got a couple of important items to share with you. And first, the PAC team, our whole PAC team, including the PAC Next team, wishes to acknowledge that tomorrow, September 30th, is Canada's first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation with Indigenous Peoples. And it's combined with Orange Shirt Day. And for those who may be listening and who may not be familiar with Orange Shirt Day, it's a day, an Indigenous-led commemorative day to honor the children who survived residential schools and remember those who did not. So we encourage the PAC community to reflect on what truth and reconciliation means to you, to wear orange tomorrow and join us in this very important national effort. Secondly, a word on PAC Next from our team. PAC Next has an aspirational goal of a world without packaging waste. And the PAC Next team, here we are, offers you a wealth of knowledge, experience, and high quality resources related to packaging sustainability and circularity. And that's especially true through our education and training initiatives, including today, and including events like these. So beginning a week from today, all the way through November and beyond, we've got a number of different, we've got webinars, some courses, even a live event in November at PACX Toronto, and we'd love you to join us in one or more of these. So please mark them on your calendar and reach out to us if you have any questions. And all the information about these events you can find on our website. Finally, I wanted to mention that our speakers today will present for about 35 minutes, 30 to 35 minutes, followed by a Q&A. And so please be sure to use the Q&A box. You can, throughout the presentations, you can use the Q&A, submit your questions, and then we'll get to them at the end for a good 10 or 15 minutes to address your questions. So let's get to it. Let's get into the life of a plastic bottle. Our first presenter today is Brianna Ames. Brianna is Coca-Cola Canada's director responsible for a number of things, and they include public affairs, government relations, stakeholder partnerships, sustainability, and community-related programming. So a full slate indeed. Brianna, it's very good to have you with PAC today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning or afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in. Thank you so much for having me. As Andrew mentioned, my name is Brianna, and I'm the Director of Public Affairs, Communications, and Sustainability at Coca-Cola. On the slide, you can see a snapshot of the global, social, and environmental priorities at the Coca-Cola Company. We have developed an ambitious goal across the 8 pillars seen, covering everything from environmental, social, and the health and wellness of our consumers. And as you know, I'm here today with Alan to discuss the journey of the bottle. So the focus will be on our World Without Waste strategy, which is on the top of the slide. Next slide, please. In 2018, we announced our World Without Waste strategy, which puts a renewed focus on the entire packaging life cycle, from how bottles and cans are designed and made to how they're recycled and repurposed. We believe we have a responsibility to help be part of the solution, and we established these goals in order to ensure we are helping to create a circular economy. A circular economy is a system aimed at eliminating waste through the continual use of existing resources. In other words, valuable recyclables like the PET and aluminum that we use in our packaging are reused to make new bottles, cans, or other useful products. This is the right thing to do for our planet, our communities, and our business. On the left, you'll see the current state today in Canada, which is essentially 2 paths, landfill or recycling. Because of some of the challenges facing the recycling system, which we will discuss, in many cases, materials that can and should be recycled are instead used once and sent to landfill. Even when material gets recycled, not all of it comes back in the form of new beverage packaging. For instance, despite the fact that 75% of our packaging gets recycled, only 9% of rPET is currently used in our packaging because the majority of the material is going to other industries. For instance, clothing, carpets, furniture, etc. At Coca-Cola, we need to recapture as much of the material as we can once it gets recycled to put back into our packaging. Some of the challenges to proper recycling include consumer confusion about what can and cannot be recycled. When consumers put the wrong things in the recycling bins, it can contaminate everything in the recycling stream and cause recyclable materials to go to landfill. Another challenge is that public spaces and facilities invest in recycling infrastructure at different rates. So recycling bins aren't always available at work or a public park. And the recycling centers themselves are not standardized across Canada. Not all recyclable materials are accepted at every recycling center. It varies market to market and of course contributes to consumer confusion. At a high level, these are the challenges that play a big role in causing valuable recyclables to end up in the landfill. Saying that, recycling organizations like Return It are addressing these challenges to ensure material is being properly recycled. The image on the right shows a circular economy, an economic system aimed at eliminating waste through the continual use of existing resources. We believe in creating a circular economy in which materials that are valuable recyclables, like the PET and aluminum we use in our beverage packaging, are reused to make new bottles or cans. Next slide, please. Let's take a more in-depth look at the pillars that underpin our World Without Waste strategy. Our goals for creating a world without waste include, first, making 100% of our packaging recyclable by 2025. 2, reducing virgin PET used by 3 million metric tons globally by 2025. 3, make bottles and cans with 50% recycled content by 2030. And 4, help collect and recycle a can or bottle for every one we sell by 2030. We're doing this by focusing efforts across 4 areas. Design, which of course is very relevant to the audience on this webinar today. We specifically are designing our bottles and cans using materials like PET and aluminum that are valuable recyclables. Our bottles are not designed to be single use. They are designed to be reused, to be made into new bottles or cans. Collect. We believe it should be easier for consumers to recycle than it is to throw items away. That is why in markets around the world, we are actively engaged in policy discussions around collection and investing in recycling infrastructure and educational programs to help make recycling simpler and more accessible. Partner. No one can do this alone. It is a very complex issue that we're trying to address. And so we're partnering with organizations, governments, customers, and consumers so that industry and ourselves can support creating a healthy, debris-free environment. And inspire. We can't achieve our design, collect, and we can't achieve our commitments that I mentioned on this slide without this final pillar. Our consumers, customers, and teams must be inspired to think, feel, and behave differently around recycling for us to reach our goals. Next slide, please. On my final slide, we'll take a look in more detail at how this strategy is coming to life in Canada. Design, and I'll spend the most time on this pillar. At the highest level, from a design perspective in Canada, it's important to understand that we're fully integrated into the United States. So when we make some of the design changes I'm about to elaborate on, they're North American wide. This requires coordination across multiple manufacturing locations, many different suppliers, and our bottling partners to ensure a smooth transition. As you can imagine, we are incredibly careful about the quality of our products, and so some design changes require multiple tests, multiple months of Q&A testing to ensure the product isn't harmed as we transition to more sustainable packaging. So with respect to design, some specific examples of the work we are undertaking today include recycled content. Beyond our internal World Without Waste commitment, many on this webinar will know that the Canadian federal government has committed to introducing national minimum recycled content standards. As you can see on this slide, we're a member of the Canada Plastics Pact, which also has recycled content commitments, and we're actively engaged in these policy discussions and at the same time working cross-functionally internally to help ensure that we meet our glide path here in Canada. Lightweighting. We have set a new goal to reduce our use of virgin plastic derived from non-renewable resources by a cumulative 3 million metric tons over the next 5 years. In 2025, depending on our business growth, we project that we will use approximately 20% less virgin plastic than we do today as we ramp up the adoption of recycled materials, pursue lightweighting initiatives, and expand our fountain and virtually packageless models. An example of lightweighting is on our Dasani brand, which we have lightweighted by 30% since 1999. And then another important pillar of work is the work that we're doing to increase the value of the materials that we're putting into the recycling stream. So to support a circular economy, we want to make sure that we're giving recyclers, like our friends at Return It, good quality materials. And a great example of how we're doing this is our plan to transition our green PET to clear, since we know that clear PET is higher value and easier to recycle. Another example is work we're doing around our labels to make them more recyclable. In the collect pillar across Canada, our collection rate is approximately 74.8%. We're lucky to have such strong provincial recycling programs like Return It here in British Columbia. A significant amount of work that is happening in Canada on collection is focused on EPR and ways to streamline some of the administrative considerations on the back end so that things are consistent for consumers across the country and reduce confusion. We're thrilled this year to be a founding member of Circular Materials Ontario, and in fact, this morning, Circular Materials announced a strategic partnership with the Canadian Beverage Container Recycling Association in Canada. These are important partnerships that will help us significantly increase our collection rates in Ontario and lift the collection rates across Canada. From a partnership perspective, as I mentioned, partnerships are critical to helping us achieve our work, whether it's our partnership with Return It, the Canada Plastics Pact, or the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup. These are important levers to help create a circular economy in Canada. And finally, inspire. Whether it's leveraging our packaging with new messaging promoting recycling or communicating externally about our partnerships, we're excited about the work that we're doing to inspire our consumers to recycle and help create a strong circular economy here in Canada. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Alan. Thank you.
I'll just jump in. This is Andrew, just for a moment, Alan, just to remind our intrepid audience that to please use the Q&A if you've got questions for Brianna or for Alan after his presentation. We'll take them all up after Alan presents. So hopefully you can find that Q&A top, bottom side of your screen, and feel free to just go for it, and I'll keep my eye on that. And we'll take them up, as I say, after Alan presents. So speaking of which, without further ado, I'm very pleased to welcome Alan Langdon as President and CEO of Return It. Alan oversees the most successful used beverage container management program in Canada. Return It's mandate is to develop, manage, and improve systems to recover used packaging and end-of-life products from consumers, and also to ensure that they are properly recycled and not landfilled or incinerated. So Alan, it's wonderful to have you with PAC today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Andrew, and thanks to everyone at PAC for this opportunity to talk about what we're doing at Return It and how we're moving ahead and trying to increase recycling and increase our recovery of plastic materials. So just as a starting point, I just wanted to do a little kind of overview of who Return It is, especially for those of you outside British Columbia, even though I know a lot of you outside BC will know us as well. So we're responsible for managing the recycling system for most ready-to-drink beverage containers here in British Columbia. We're unique in terms of deposit programs in that we're the only province where it's 100% industry managed. We have great partners at government, and of course, government sets the ground rules, sets our recovery, approves our recovery targets and our stewardship plan. And I would be remiss in not saying that part of our success is based on the British Columbia approach, which is really focused on an outcomes-based approach as opposed to being a more prescriptive model that you see in other jurisdictions. So it really gives industry the latitude to provide the kind of innovation that's required when meeting some of these significant challenges, particularly as it relates to plastics. I'd also like to point out, in addition to managing, the system for beverage containers, used beverage containers, we also support and provide services to the Electronics Product Recycling Association and the Major Appliance Recycling Roundtable. So we help manage collections, leveraging our collection sites across British Columbia for electronics, and then also provide back office support and other support to the Major Appliances program. We're employing over 750 people in British Columbia, including 57 direct employees. We have a network of over 170 collection locations. And over the last 26 years, we've recycled or collected over 21 billion containers. Next slide. So just a bit about our infrastructure. So first thing to note is that the vast, almost all of the population of British Columbia has access to some form of collection facility for beverage containers in British Columbia. So our network is, our direct network is where about 93% of our volume goes through, consists of 165 independently owned depot locations, 70 of which offer our express service. We have 7 Express and Go stations, which I'll talk a little bit about more, as well as 2 Express Plus locations. And those Express and Go and Express Plus are managed directly by Encore Return It. About 5% of our volume comes back through retail locations. So there is mandatory return to retail in British Columbia. And I would note that that's been dropping quite significantly over the last few years. So 10 years ago, maybe 10% of our volume was coming back to retail. So that continues to drop. And during the pandemic, many stores stopped accepting containers. And there's definitely been a shift where once consumers started taking it to depots, we saw less and less of those consumers coming back to retail. And then in terms of other collection points, we do have agreements with the other stewardship agency, Recycle BC, so the containers that end up in the blue box do come back to Return It, and we are able to capture those and report them as part of our annual recovery rate. Next slide. So in terms of materials included within our program, so we're responsible for all ready-to-drink beverage containers sold in BC, identified under Schedule 1 of the recycling regulation. So you'll see aluminum cans, metal cans, plastic bottles, glass bottles, other plastic jugs, particularly juice, and then bag-in-a-box and drink pouches and drink boxes and gable-top cartons. One significant change is on February 1st next year, milk and milk substitute containers will be joining our program. And so that'll include not only milk products, but also things like rice milk, soy milk, almond milk, and oat milk. And also another development with our recently approved stewardship plan is alcohol aluminum cans, which some of which are managed by another stewardship agency, can now appoint Encore or Return It as their stewardship agency. So we're looking forward to a significant increase in the number of containers in our program starting next year. Next slide. So, what we wanted to talk today about is, of course, plastic beverage containers. And so part of it is talking about, what's our success in terms of recovery rate. So in 2020, there were about 500 million plastic beverage containers sold in British Columbia, and we were able to recover around 350 million through our collection network for a 70% recovery rate. I would note that that's probably the lowest recovery rate for plastic we've had in a couple of years, and I'm expecting that that will be higher in 2021, maybe as high as over 75%, but at least around 75%. And part of our success is a long-standing relationship we've had with Merlin Plastics, which was where we sell and ship our plastics to. And so all the plastics collected in the Return It program are managed either in their BC or Alberta facilities, where they're cleaned and pelletized to become raw material for reuse. So we've had a long-standing partnership with Merlin Plastics, and both organizations have grown over the last 25 years. And they've really been a success, part of our success, and also a key part in telling the story and trying to educate the public. Because for whatever reason, and probably in part because there's so much conflicting information around plastics and the recycling of plastics, that some residents remain steadfast in their belief that we're shipping all our plastics overseas. And so a big part of what we try and do is just communicate that actually, no, A, our plastics are remaining here domestically, and B, that they're being recycled responsibly. And I think it's important to note that in BC's EPR system, we actually have to pass through third-party audits for the end of life of our materials. So we actually have to retain, we do retain a third-party auditor, typically the same auditor that does our financial audit, that actually is tasked with reviewing all the source documents related to the recycling of our material and ensuring what we have communicated or what we claim has happened with our material has actually happened. And that could include things such as facility visits as well. Next slide. So at this point, I want to play a video we just put together around what happens with plastic, because I could talk for a long time, but sometimes images are a better way to communicate what actually happens with our material here in BC. And I'll let Pat just play this.
The secret lives of a plastic beverage container. Where do they really end up? Plastic bottles are made from a type of plastic called PET, polyethylene terephthalate, sometimes referred to as PET, and represented by the recycling symbol number 1. This is what makes them so easy to recycle. In fact, plastic bottles can be recycled over and over again. When you return your plastic bottles, they get collected, packed up and shipped to a processing facility where they're flattened and baled. Next, they're chopped, washed, and sanitized before being formed into plastic pellets. These are sold to manufacturers who make them into new products, including more new plastic bottles.
At Merlin, our business is recycling plastics. Pellets created from the recycling process are used in a variety of applications, including new bottle for beverage. Last year, over 10,000 metric tons of PET bottles collected in BC were recycled in our plant. Recycled plastics displaces the need to use non-renewable resources, saves energy, and keeps it out of our natural environment.
To make new plastic bottles, the plastic pellets are made into what are called preforms. The preforms are heated and air is blown into them. Then they're ready to be filled by beverage companies. This is all done locally, right here in Canada. In BC, it's been that way for the last 25 years. In fact, over 74% of all plastic beverage containers in BC are recycled, and most of them are made into new plastic bottles again. In 2019, over 380 million plastic containers were recycled. That's the weight of about 25 international space stations.
Beverage containers are designed to be recycled. They're made to be remade and can be recycled over and over again. So while you're out and about enjoying your favorite drink, hold on to the container with its cap on until you can return it and get your deposit back.
The entire plastic bottle recycling process creates a circular economy, which relies on consumers continuing to return their plastic bottles for recycling.
A circular economy is an all-encompassing approach where nothing is wasted. When we continue to return plastic beverage containers for recycling, we are ensuring that they are part of a closed-loop circular solution. For over 25 years, we have worked with brand owners on innovative solutions, and with the support of British Columbians, we've recycled over 74% of plastic bottles. Together, we can continue to do even more.
Plastic bottles in our oceans and landfills can be a big problem, but it's one we have the ability to fix. Do your part to keep plastic bottles out of our environment. Always remember to recycle.
Thanks so much. And hopefully, part of the reason we put together this video was really to get at the point I talked about before, was really communicating to the public that this material is being recycled, that this material is being recycled locally, and that this material is being made into new bottles and packaging. So I just wanted to touch in kind of my next 3 slides on what recycling looks like in BC in the future and part of our modernization strategy. So in 2020, we announced a broad suite of initiatives to help modernize our recycling system. And we did that because, well, obviously we want to increase our recycling rates and make it easier and more convenient for consumers to recycle, in part through direct response to some of the feedback we got from consumers. We want to simplify and streamline the recycling experience, invest in initiatives aimed at reducing our carbon footprint, because as much as we're concerned about things like plastic pollution, we're also, of course, mightily concerned about the impacts of climate change as kind of an existential threat to our entire world. And so we, of course, want to play our part. And then really to address the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we really try to adapt and evolve our system to limit contact and touch points, both for consumers and our workers, and really increase convenience, particularly for some of our younger recyclers. And I think of relatively younger in our millennial or Gen Z cohorts. Next slide. So the big change was the introduction of Return It Express. So we introduced this service back in 2019. We had previously been piloting it, but in 2019, we really went to the next stage and began to deploy it across the province. We did it because convenience, we found, is the primary motivator for consumers to recycle. Certainly they want their money back, but a lot of decisions, more and more, particularly with younger cohorts, is made simply on what's the most convenient option. So we wanted a fast, convenient, contactless, and easy recycling experience, and one where people could be in and out of a deep ore collection facility in under a minute. So through the system, there's no sorting, and deposit refunds, rather than getting them in cash, they're actually uploaded directly through a user online account. And then when people have more than $10 and want their money back, they can just simply hit redeem, and we will send them the money via an e-transfer. We currently have over 176,000 express registrants. We had about 20,000 when we really started our expansion in 2019. So we've added 156,000 customers in just over 2 years. And of those customers, 95% have indicated an improved satisfaction level. And we've taken that initial expansion in terms of our Express at our conventional depots and expanded it to also include our Express and Go stations and our Express Plus. Next slide. So how do these things differ? So Express and Depot is really providing express service at our conventional depots, so where people have the ability to recycle the conventional route in terms of waiting in line and having and receiving their money right when they drop off their containers, or doing Express. Express Plus is our own corporate locations, which are completely cashless locations. So they allow us to fit into communities that wouldn't traditionally be accepting of a depot or return at depot. So, we've primarily tried to locate these in dense urban communities where another format would be more difficult to implement. And we've also tried to make sure that they're not only servicing for beverage containers, but providing kind of a one-stop shop for a range of other materials. So the one you're seeing on the slide to your right is our new location in Lower Lonsdale in North Vancouver, where people can not only recycle beverage containers through Express, but also drop off a myriad of materials such as electronics, small appliances, batteries, light bulbs, and textiles. And then finally, our Express and Go stations are kind of the newest addition, which are really kind of self-serve locations that we've designed to help increase our accessibility both in rural communities and in urban dense communities. So they're really reconfigured sea containers with solar panels, doors, and a security system. And otherwise, the system works pretty much the same way. People bring in their containers unlabeled or bring in their containers unsorted. They are able to print off a label at the station, put it on their bag, and then with a PIN code, open the door and drop their containers, where they're then taken to a central counting facility and the refund uploaded to their online account. People love these so far. So we have 7 already. And we're starting to partner with local retailers. So we had our first retailer partnership with Real Canadian Superstore, or Loblaws. And so we have a location in North Vancouver, and we're currently working with 3 or 4 retailers on different locations for these. And for retailers who are mandated by law to accept container returns, they find these fantastic addition in that they can continue to meet that objective and that social responsibility objective to take containers back to from their customers, but it also doesn't have to interfere with their store operations. And so for this one, this Express and Go that we're looking at, which is in North Vancouver, it actually collected almost 100,000 containers even in its first month. And so the feedback we've gotten on these is great, both from retailers and customers, and we're looking at expanding this model quite broadly across BC over the next 2 years. Next slide. I also wanted to talk, a big part of what we also do is based on focus specifically on plastics and being part of larger initiatives beyond just return it. So while we're committed to doing what we can, we're also committed to supporting larger initiatives aimed at eliminating the issue of plastic waste. So we are one of the first signatories of the global commitment led by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And our specific commitments are to recycle 80% of plastic beverage containers sold in BC by 2025, as well as eliminating single-use plastic film from our supply chain. So when I first started to return it, a lot of our containers continue to be managed or transported or shipped in single-use plastic bags. And over the last couple of years, we've slowly phased that out to the point that we no longer purchase single-use bags, and all of our containers are actually shipped, with a small minority that we're going to figure out by the end of the year, when all of our containers will be shipped back to our processing facilities in reusable bags or reusable containers. We're also a founding partner of the Canada Plastics Pact, which is kind of a cross-stakeholder platform, multi-stakeholder platform across the value chain, where people have come together to eliminate, innovate, and circulate. So it really is a platform for stakeholders in the plastic value chain to collaborate and drive innovative solutions. And we're really looking forward to this as kind of a significant opportunity to work with partners across BC, across Canada, across the value chain, to help develop a more circular economy for plastics. We feel that we've already made a lot of progress in terms of developing a circular economy for the plastics we recover, but are really encouraged in the opportunity to work on some of the materials that are still a challenge for us, as well as share some of the learnings that we've found in our system to help other partners and other players develop a more circular model for the materials they manage. Next slide. And I just want to talk briefly about those objectives for the Canada Plastics Pact. So what they've looked at, what they've set out as objectives for 2025 is to define a list of plastic packaging that is designated as problematic or unnecessary and take measures to eliminate them. To ensure that 100% of plastic packaging is designed to be reusable, recyclable, or compostable. That 50% of plastic packaging is effectively recycled or composted, and that 30% recycled content across all plastic packaging. And those are all objectives that we can support and all ones that we're helping to encourage and help make a reality by the time we hit 2025. Next slide. So that's it for my presentation. I hope that was helpful in terms of illuminating, kind of what we're doing at Return It as kind of the next evolution of recycling, and really happy to take anyone's questions at this point.
Thank you, Alan and Brianna. If you can jump back on and join us for some questions and answers. And Alan, I just couldn't help sharing this. So I found this on my son's floor, this bedroom floor this morning. No cap, by the way, just noted that. And I thought, hey, maybe the 3-minute Return It video would be good, homework after school today. I think that might be a good motivator.
Yeah, I appreciate one of the comments in the chat about the use of video. I think, that we tried to approach, what could be a pretty dry topic, recycling, with, some animation and some catchy music. I hope it's catchy, as a way to kind of communicate a message about a fairly technical issue to a much broader audience and make it more palatable for people to understand, what goes on with the recycling process and make it more accessible and understandable to them. So I appreciate the comments.
Yeah, good, as do I. And listen, audience, we've got a solid 15 plus minutes here, so let's settle in. There are a number of questions for both presenters. And so let's work our way through them. Alan, Brianna, I'll toggle back as best I can between you to keep you on your toes. And so let's jump in. And Brianna, I'll start with a question for you. And it's this. Is Coca-Cola planning to move all of its colored PET bottles to clear PET? So thinking of the example you gave of the move with Sprite. And then the follow-up relates to something else you mentioned. So it's a two-parter. And that is, what changes are you planning to make around the labels? So you mentioned that as well. So comments on that, please. Oh, and just unmute for us.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. So yes, at a high level, there are other markets globally that have already transitioned. I think if you think about Sprite and Fresca, those are probably the most iconic packages that we have in green. I think some other markets globally have already transitioned, but that is in the works here in North America as well, and going through just some of the considerations I mentioned in my presentation around getting all the suppliers, all the manufacturers, getting everything ready to launch that, which is really exciting for the North American market. And then with respect to the labeling, and Alan might be able to pipe in where I have some of it, but not all of it. There's a lot from a, first of all, I did check with our technical people. I think the phrase is APR approved, but I don't actually know what that means because I'm not.
That's the Association of Plastic. It's the Association of Plastic Recyclers approved.
Thank you. So it's my understanding is it's evolving our labels to help make sure that when they go through the MRFs that they fall off more easily and they're more easily separated from the plastic. And so there's just a lot of work that needs to happen across various considerations of the labels to continue evolving the labels that we use on our package to be more and more recyclable. So that's how I can answer at a high level, but if there's more detail required, we can follow up over email.
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Brianna. And certainly the APR Design Guide is a very useful tool that's available, publicly available on the Association of Plastic Recyclers website. Alan, any comment on the label piece, or shall we move ahead?
Yeah, no, I think brand owners in general, including Coke, have been really receptive when folks like Return It, our partners at Merlin, who's a big, both of us are supporters of the APR. When we brought forward issues, I think in the past, one of them was PETG had become a problem in terms of it was becoming a contaminant with our PET recycling. And I think a lot of brand owners have been really willing to engage with us, and because it's a shared problem, and so we've been able to work together on shared solutions. So I think there's lots of good communication across the supply chain.
Good, and a number of those topics wrapped up in the newly released Golden Design Rules, which will be a topic for another day.
Exactly. Yeah.
Pact for PAC, it'll be on October 13th. Quick plug. But listen, Alan, a couple of related, somewhat technical questions for you. This first one came up several times, so I want to make sure we ask it. And that is, how many times can a PET bottle be recycled? And then the follow-up is, does creating a recycled plastic bottle require some virgin material as part of the solution?
Yeah, those are really good questions. So, a plastic bottle can be recycled a number of times, anywhere between 5 and 10 times. And it depends on, the quality material and the recycler. At some point you are going to have some dematerialization, there's no doubt. But I think the goal is to try and ensure that material gets recycled as many times as possible. And I think what was the second part of the question, Andrew? It was,
well, do you need virgin to make
right? Yeah. So for sure you need some component of virgin. I think, we all understand one of the challenges with recycled plastic is it's managed through the current system is you have issues with odor and discoloration. And so it's inevitable you'll need some level of virgin. And I think the challenge is to try and use as much recycled content as possible. I know there are some 100% rPET bottles, but for the most part, you're going to need some level of virgin.
Got it. Good. And just one more, because it's straightforward, but I think interesting to understand for you, Alan, about the system in BC is that do all the beverage containers in the province of British Columbia have a deposit?
Yeah, so with the introduction of milk and milk substitute containers, it will probably have about 99% of the sealed beverage containers will have a deposit. There are some minor exceptions for things like nutritional supplements and infant formulas, so things like that. But otherwise, with milk and milk substitute containers coming in, we'll have basically every container will have a deposit.
Got it. Thank you. So Brianna, I'll come back to you, and it's a question around cost of recycled PET in particular. And certainly this is not a new issue for brand owners across the board. So the question is this: because rPET currently costs more than virgin PET, what are some of the considerations internally to deal with that? Where you have goals to increase the percentage of recycled PET in this case in your products. How do you balance all of these considerations, including the cost factor?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and I think as we continue to build out our glide path in Canada, North America, and globally to meet our World Without Waste commitments, we are looking at how do you manage those costs. And one way is through good relationships with your suppliers. And another way is the continued work that we're doing to increase supply through collection policy and programs that is going to increase access, to recycled content. So those are just really important live conversations, and why it's so important that we're involved in all these discussions through the Canada Plastics Pact, as one example, and the Canadian government.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And I'm going to stay with you, Brianna. So hang on here with me. One more here, question from the US, from out west in the US. And it reads like this. It seems unfortunate that Coke is lumping the aluminum cans in with data for plastic bottle goals. We all know that recycling and PCR in cans is very strong. So does Coke have any specific goals for recycling and recycled content measures just for the plastic bottle stream?
Yeah, so we do track internally and also externally by category. So I just want to assure maybe that didn't come across, you know, in the presentation, but I know certainly recycling affiliates like Return It, and then also us internally, we do report out by package type, and then there's also just an aggregate across all packaging. So that's just one clarification on that piece. Is it is very important to us. We know how important PET is. I think I lost the rest of the question, sorry, in answering the first part.
Well, I think you got the heart of it. The bottom line is Coca-Cola tracks those materials separately and reports out on them as well. So I hope that helps.
Thank you.
That helps you, the attendee who asked that question.
Can I just add something to that point? So I think one of the new developments for us in our new stewardship plan is starting next year, we're actually going to start to report not just the amount of material that's been collected, but how much of that material actually ends up in new bottles. So, you know, we think it's important to support brand owners who have made significant commitments to have recycled content, to begin to communicate to the public that, okay, in British Columbia, if we collected 10,000, metric tons of plastic, we're going to report that 60 or 70% of that has actually ended up has been marketed or sold to brand owners for use as recycled content in new bottles. And we think that will help support, from a communications perspective, in helping residents and consumers understand the link between what the recycling programs are doing and how they're supporting the commitments that manufacturers and brand owners have made to increase the amount of recycled content in their packaging.
Yeah, nice add, Alan, thank you. And you know what, I've got several other audience questions. I'm just gonna build on what you just said, Alan, with the question of my own, and that is, could you comment on the effect that Return It has on the quality of feedstock, and the connection then with the recycled content applications that are available because of that effect on the quality of the feedstock?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to give a not technical answer to some of this, which is, I think most recycling subscribes to the garbage in, garbage out philosophy, right? So if you've got highly contaminated material on the input, you're probably not going to get great outputs. And so, our material is probably some of the cleanest you'll see in North America, just because it's collected in a segregated fashion all the way through the supply chain. And when we have visitors, be it from other parts of Canada or other parts of North America, come visit our facilities, they're just blown away by the near virgin quality of our material. And so they're all super excited because they understand that, having such clean, pure material is actually going to make for really high quality recycled content. And so I think it's a key part, and I think it's a key differentiator going forward. We all know that we need recycled content to create a more circular economy, and the easiest way to do that, or one of the things, kind of the key ways to do that, is make sure that you have good quality material. And so, I think over time we've really shown that, we have that, and that it's, kind of a key plank in ensuring that everyone has access to the kind of recycled content they need.
Good, thank you for that. Now, I'll stay with you, Alan. Just a specific question on your program. Does Return It collect data on what SKUs are being recycled, whether they're brands or specific, types of items?
Yeah, no, we've never collected brand. What I can say is that, we do, for plastics, we do report recovery rate for both under one liter and under, and over 1 liter. So that is the kind of one, difference in terms of reporting. And so we have to report a specific recovery rate. So our plastic under 1 liter, probably around 70%. Our plastic over 1 liter, probably over 80%. And we're working towards as an organization to get that collective plastic recycling rate over 75%.
Got it. Okay, thank you. So audience, you're keeping me on my toes going between chat and Q&A, so I'm doing my best to keep up. And what I do see in both is that there is a theme of questions, at least 3, maybe more, around reuse. And where is reuse in the conversation? And so Brianna, could you make a comment on where reuse of your containers, your beverage containers, does it fit into the broader strategy, and if so, how?
Yeah, no, reuse absolutely fits into the broader conversation. I think there's other markets globally, frankly, that from Coca-Cola that have already done some really interesting and exciting reuse projects and pilots and are sort of evolving there. It's a little bit easier in some other markets just because of the nature of how consumers shop or how we manufacture. There's a number of considerations around that. In Canada, it's a little bit more difficult, but where we've done some really exciting things so far is really around supporting the work from our customers. So at the University of Carleton, for instance, we worked with their food court around our Coca-Cola Freestyle machines and getting a cup with RFID chips that made it easier for university students to reuse their cups on campus, as an example. There's some other exciting things from our customers rolling out this year and into next, and there's a lot of work that we do sort of behind the scenes on that. But there is a big focus and a big work stream on other more direct ways. So stay tuned. I think it's probably more in 2022 and beyond, again, because it is complicated, just the nature of how consumers live, shop, work in Canada. But it is a focus for us.
Yeah, good. Thank you. For audience members interested, and again, I see some other questions around reuse, particular interest of mine. So feel free to follow up with me directly on that. But I'd also be interested if Alan, from your vantage point, do you have a comment on the sort of broader reuse question and where that fits into?
Yeah,
things?
so I think, so definitely, reuse and refillable is something that we're looking at. Part of it is that, part of that is brand driven. So where there are opportunities to partner with brands and refillable projects, we're definitely interested. We'll probably be looking at something in the wine industry going forward. There's lots of partnerships we've looked at with folks in the States that are going down this road, and we've got some interest from the local wine industry. And so it kind of has the perfect symmetry for what we need for a reusable program. There's lots of people promoting reusable programs, and it's great. One of the challenges is they're not made to scale up. So it's great if you have a reusable program where things get shipped around and flown around North America. That really doesn't lead to a scalable model. So what we're really focused on is, can we pilot something in a specific geography where we know that if it works, we can build it out based on that geography and transfer it to other locations. But I know, in talking to a number of other brand owners that have gone down these programs, and I know because we're involved in one of them right now, the complexity of managing reusable program is a huge shift from the model we have today. It's not that it's there's not barriers that can't be overcome, but there are barriers and they need to be overcome. And so we're hoping to be launching, one reusable, perhaps two reusable programs, maybe not specifically in sealed beverage containers other than wine, next year. And I think it gives us a lot of really good learnings on how reusable can be part of the solution going forward. I don't think they're going to be necessarily the main part of the solution, but they can be part of the solution going forward. Absolutely.
Good to hear, Alan, and nice to hear about those specific projects on the go. So I've got my eye on the clock, and unfortunately we're nearing the top of the hour. I think we've got time for perhaps one or two relatively brief questions, and then we'll close with a poll and a brief thanks, of course. So Alan, I'll stick with you. We have a question around access to programs. I think you may have seen it in the chat. You led off your slides with, I think the number was, I'm going to say 98% of BCers with access to return it. And the question here is, comment and question is, I live in a small northern BC town. And I guess from this audience member's perspective, the recycling process is challenging. So question is, what is the process for proposing a solution like this to a small community? Oh, Alan, You're muted.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually responded to that person directly and said,
Oh, you
please
did?
tell me what, yeah, please tell me what small town you're in, because we'd love to improve the recycling in your community.
Okay, good.
You know, communities, you know, just an example, we just opened our latest Express and Go station in the village of McBride, population under 1,000. It's a community that didn't have access to recycling for a number of years because the population couldn't support a conventional depot. Last week, we shipped 18 megabags of material. So that's probably, you know, almost 20,000 containers that previously didn't have a home. So, you know, if that person wants to reach out to me, happy to talk to them and find a solution for their town, because we're slowly building out the network as we can and trying to fill in those gaps. I also just wanted to comment on, there was someone asking about, you know, Coke and how they know the percentage of bottles being recycled if we don't collect brand item information. Honestly, we don't think the brand item information is really relevant. We have lots of large brand owners, and you can rest assured that if we're recycling 75%, then 75% of their containers are being recycled. We also want to run a cost-effective system. So if anything, we're trying to simplify the system and reduce the sorts and reduce the complexity, because ultimately that'll reduce the cost of our system and reduce the impact on our brand owners and on our consumers. And so we're always trying to have this balance of making sure that we're providing enough relevant information so people know the performance of the system and how we're doing, as well as trying to keep the system as simple and eliminate complexity wherever we can. Because when you're collecting 1 billion containers a year, you want to have it as simple as possible, because that will, you know, could dramatically affect your costs. So I'll just leave it at that.
Alan, we are in sync, because that was the last question I'd hoped to squeeze in before we close. So Brianna, I hope that's okay. I was going to throw that your way, but Alan adeptly dealt with that. And we're 5 to the hour, which is the time we like to wrap. So to give everyone at least a minute or two to move on to the next meeting or lunch, depending on where you are. So listen, on behalf of PAC and on behalf of our robust webinar audience today, Brianna, Alan, thank you very much for taking the time to prepare and present. We appreciate it. And to share all of your knowledge on, you know, these little items that are present in our daily lives. So I really feel like everyone who participated today has a better sense of what's going on with these materials and of some of the good projects that are going on here in Canada and BC and globally. So to our webinar audience, thank you for joining us. We hope you've learned something new today. Shortly, we will send out the recording of today's presentations, along with a set of key takeaways from both Alan and Brianna's presentations. So one more plug for our upcoming PAC events that were shared, you know, on the earlier slides. All the information from those events can be found on the pac.ca website. And otherwise, in the meantime, we hope you stay healthy, keep smiling, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.